Someone's playing a very deadly game.
Could be anyone.
You can't stop it. You can't kill it.
There's something there.
Because it's not even alive. An all-new Buffy. Next.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Slay, the Buffyverse Revisited. I am one of your hosts. I'm Jeremy.
I'm your other host, James.
And this week we will be kicking in. No, we will be...
some fucking doors.
Yeah, kicking in some doors. We will be getting into episode 9, season 1, The Puppet Show.
Yes.
Again, I have no idea what that could even mean.
I don't know. They're really burying the lead with these titles.
I'm telling you, because it's, they name it one thing and then it's completely different than what they name it.
Right. My guess is this one is probably about werewolves.
Yeah, I'm going.
Finally.
I'm always with werewolves. So
Always. I just noticed I'm pretty much just like a floating head right here
are you?
for everybody to see.
Well, I guess it's than being a decapitated head for everyone to see.
True.
I mean, that would be a little more startling, I think.
Very true. Very true.
So, anything happened this week of interest?
We got a YouTube comment on
shit.
episode 7, Angel. Listener by the name of T said, "You two are hilarious. Great podcast, guys."
Yes,
So,
I'd like to thank the Academy first. Let me come over to your house real quick, James. I'm going to smack you.
So thank you, T. We appreciate you listening and or watching.
Now, was it T as in like iced tea or?
It's just T.
Just the letter T.
Just the letter T. Yep.
Okay. All right.
But thank you. We appreciate the compliment. We appreciate you listening, and we appreciate the support. Thank you very much.
Yes, we do. We appreciate everyone who listens. All 15 of you.
100%.
Awesome.
Yes. And if you comment, we will address it here, and you can verbally hear how well we appreciate you.
You will verbally
hear. I thought about that after I said it. I was like, not sure what I mean by that.
I'm not sure where to go with that either, but
I don't
I'm
know.
just gonna leave it.
Yeah. But other than that, no emails, no other comments or anything like that. So how about you? Anything?
No, not at all. Nothing show related.
Okay.
And just same old shit, different week, other than obviously Will Smith deciding to go kung fu on Chris Rock at the fucking Oscars. And of course with that I was like, what?
Yeah, I don't. That whole situation is
just like here. I don't want to have
wacky.
a career anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
That's The whole thing's nuts. But
I'm sure my ass doesn't need to weigh in on it. All the professionally funny people have already, but
right.
Goddamn, that was stupid.
Yeah, it's who knows what was going through that man's mind.
Mud.
But it is what it is, and
it is what it is what it is.
There'll be some short-term ramifications that'll hurt him for a little while, but in the long run, he's Will Smith. It'll bounce back, most likely.
Maybe I might be in the minority here. Probably am. I usually am. I've never been like a big Will Smith guy.
Okay. This will be my last episode of no.
I don't know. I had never I wasn't into the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That was just not my cup of tea. And then I don't know. Probably the only movies he's ever done that were even remotely of interest to me were the Men in Black movies.
Yeah.
I mean, I might be forgetting something, but I can't think of anything else I ever really cared about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, kind of like with a lot of fans and whatnot, it depends on what your preferred genre of movie is, or
Yeah.
anything like that. Myself and a couple of my friends, we go to the movies every Saturday morning.
Mhm.
And we don't stick to any particular one or two genres. If the movie looks, like we'll enjoy it, we'll go see it. So
I guess. Did you see the new Marvel movie? What's it called? Mobius? Or not?
Morbius.
Not Marvel. Is that Marvel?
It's
It is.
Marvel via Sony.
Yeah, it's not. It's not part of the cinematic.
Yeah,
universe,
it
but,
sucked.
Yeah, well, that's whatever. That's why I
sucked.
asked, is because it's getting totally shit on in
Yeah.
reviews and whatnot. So
Visually,
mhm.
visually, it's stunning. The special effects, the way it's shot, it's beautiful.
Mhm.
Story wise, editing, pretty much anything else you can think of, it fails on all levels. And I feel sorry for Jared Leto, because I feel like the guy's a good
Regardless
actor.
of which one of the universes he's in, he's always attached to shit.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
feel like the guy's a good actor. He just keeps getting like raw dogged on all
Yeah.
of these roles lately.
Yeah.
But
He might. If I were him, I would just get the fuck out of the comic book movie business,
right,
because every time he tries it, it's a disaster.
yeah, like stick
Um,
to things like House of Gucci. Like
yeah.
um,
Yeah. Which
but
I always thought his Joker looked fucking dope, like very different, very modern. We never really got to see much of it, but what we did, I always thought, well, what's fucking wrong with that? Everybody was shitting on it, and I was like,
yeah,
I don't get it.
yeah. Well, I think
Especially after the this little deleted scene in the Batman of the new quote unquote Joker,
right.
and that I'm like, the fuck is this? He's
Mhm.
all looks like he took a bath in acid or something. I don't know.
Well, canonically, that's how the Joker became the Joker.
Well, yeah, but I just mean it's like, what was
Yeah.
wrong with Leto's version? I don't get it, but
Um,
I don't know. DC, we're getting way off in the weeds.
I was literally just gonna say I'm gonna jump in.
But I gotta say one more thing. DC has just sucked in the cinematic universe
Oh yeah,
from the beginning. Like, they cannot get their shit together.
no.
It's like every one of the movies they release is just another like shot into the dark. Like, hey, let's just throw this crap on the wall and see what sticks.
The only character they ever seem to have a remote handle on doing anything with is Batman.
Yeah, and even that they've fucked up. I mean,
In the past, yeah, the
you know?
the new Batman movie is phenomenal.
Yeah, and then they shit all over. Okay, let's get out. Let's get the hell out of this. And get
Yeah,
into,
we've
hey,
we've veered way off course. Let's jump into some dates and deets here.
Yeah, let's do.
This isn't DC revisited.
At least not yet.
Not yet. We'll see what happens when we run out of Buffyverse things to talk about.
That's going to be a hot minute.
Yeah. Anyway, our dates and deets. Our episode this week is The Puppet Show. It originally aired on May 5th, 1997 on the WB. Our director is Ellen S. Pressman, who has 2 Buffyverse credits, both for Buffy, The Puppet Show, this episode, and Inca Mummy Girl. Her non-Buffyverse credits include episodes of Nashville, Once Upon a Time, Riverdale, Everwood, Charmed, and 30 something. No movies.
Yeah, I noticed she had a very short IMDb. A lot of older stuff, and then Buffy, and then that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. Our credited writers this episode are the writing duo, once again, of Rob Des Hotel and Dean Batali. Their credited Buffyverse episodes total 5, all for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And those are Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, this episode, The Puppet Show, The Dark Age, Phases, and Killed by Death. Their Non-Buffyverse credits include episodes of That 70s Show and The Adventures of Pete and Pete. And no
Love that show.
movies. No movies for either of them. As always, our regular cast this week includes Sarah Michelle Gellar as Buffy, Nicholas Brendan as Xander, Allison Hannigan as Willow, Charisma Carpenter as Cordelia, and Anthony Stewart Head as Giles. Our guest cast this week includes Christine Sutherland as Joyce, Rich Werner as Morgan, who fans may recognize from such classics as Scream of the Bikini, The Bacchae, Dead Tides, starring one of my favorite wrestlers, Hot Rod Roddy Piper.
And I knew him from, what'd you say, Scream of the Bikini? Yes, that was a classic.
And Baywatch Nights.
Oh, Baywatch Nights, okay.
Burke Roberts as Mark, who people may recognize from stints on NYPD Blue, The Nanny, The Visitor, Married with Children, Picket Fences, and Hearts of Fire. Tom Weiner as the voice of Sid. He's got way too many credits to mention. Yeah. He's a very prolific voice actor. If you watch movies or television, particularly animated, or you play video games, you've heard this guy's voice 100%. Yeah. And rounding out our guest cast is Armin Shimmerman.
Oh,
Am I pronouncing that right?
You are indeed, sir.
Okay. As Principal Snyder. I'm not going to list all of his credits. Again, he's another very prolific character and voice actor. Mm-hmm. Probably best known by genre fans for his role as Quark on Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Oh, yeah.
But again, if you watch movies, television, particularly animated, or play video games, you've heard or seen this man. You see him, you will know him.
I will also add he is a I believe this is true. He is now a New York Times best-selling author.
Really?
Yes, he's got a series that he's created, a fictional deal, and I believe the first, as of recording this, I know the first book is out. It's going to be a multi-part deal. The first book is out. I think the second one might be out. I'm not 100% on that. But yeah, he's a prolific writer as well. But
think there's any chance that Quark might turn up on any of the new Star Trek endeavors? Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Picard?
I tend to doubt it. He loves the Star Trek universe and his time on it. He did not love the makeup and the time spent in makeup, because to be a Ferengi on that, is a lot of makeup work.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah, so and the teeth appliances and etc. But I don't know. Never in Hollywood.
Right. Fun little fact. He was doing Deep Space Nine. So small spoiler warning. Principal Snyder does become not a regular, but a recurring character.
Yeah.
Over the next few seasons. I think he's in a total of 20 episodes, 19 or 20 episodes.
Yeah.
So he was doing this and Star Trek Deep Space Nine at the same time. And apparently both productions were very good about allowing him to juggle his schedules so that he could shoot both Buffy and Deep Space Nine at the same time.
Yeah, I've heard him say, like, usually he would shoot Buffy, or he would shoot. Now I've forgotten. I'm gonna say, I think it was he would shoot Star Trek Deep Space Nine in the mornings, and if he had to do a double duty that day, and he would go and do Buffy in the afternoons or evenings, and but yeah, he's one of my all-time favorite Star Trek actors, and Quark is one of my all-time favorite characters, and I love Armin Shimmerman. So
smart guy, nabbing roles on both of these hit shows.
Yeah. He was
bringing home those fat genre paychecks.
Yep, got to bring home the bacon, and but he's so good. He's so good.
He is. He's. I really enjoy him on Buffy. My exposure to Star Trek is limited. I have seen episodes of Deep Space Nine with him in it, and I've always found him enjoyable.
Yeah, he's one of the most beloved Deep Space Nine characters. He really is.
Our episode synopsis for this week reads: Buffy sets out to catch a thief who steals human organs, while the principal forces Giles to run the school talent show.
Yeah, okay. Mine says Buffy suspects that a ventriloquist dummy may be harvesting organs from classmates performing in a talent show. So they're just going to be right on Front Street with it on this one.
They're not leaving anything to the imagination.
No, they're not.
So let's jump right in here. We open backstage in the auditorium at Sunnydale High School with a low to the floor POV as we're watching a young lady in a ballet outfit doing stretches.
And boy, do I need to bring this up later about this. This isn't the only time we're going to see this low to the ground POV odd, and it so makes, by the end of the episode, it makes zero sense. So.
The POV starts to move through the backstage area, and we see several students are practicing their acts. There's a boy juggling, a girl playing a tuba, another boy rehearsing magic, someone practicing guitar, and finally we stop on a young man and his dummy, which coincidentally was going to be the name of our podcast.
Original. Yes, it was.
Yeah, a young man and his
which
dummy.
Was going to be which? We'll leave that up to you guys.
Right, that's for you guys to figure out. We see the boy. He's rubbing his temples and glancing around before we cut to the stage where Cordelia is singing "The Greatest Love of All," terribly, frankly.
Very badly.
We cut to Giles in the seats, and he clearly does not want to be there. He ends up interrupting Cordelia, telling her it's going to be very lovely, and she protests, saying that she didn't do the part with the sparklers, and he tells her to save it for dress rehearsal before calling up Lisa, the next performer. Cordelia puts the microphone back on its stand and leaves the stage as Lisa sets up with her tuba, and we cut back to Giles as Lisa starts to play, and he's rubbing his eyes as Buffy, Willow, and Xander come down the center aisle. And the three of them take seats around Giles and, of course, begin teasing him about having to produce the talent show. And he complains that the school's new principal, Snyder, put him in charge of the talent show despite his wishes so he could have more contact with the students. After they've finished having their fun at poor Giles' expense, they get up and start back up the aisle to leave, and lo and behold, there's shiny new Principal Snyder. And he has overheard everything they said, and he basically punishes them by forcing them to be a part of the talent show. He moves on past them and heads down towards the stage, and Xander's shocked and has to sit down, and Buffy spaces out and goes back to sit next to Giles and looks to him for sympathy, and he just has no shits to give.
Zero shits.
And Willow just stands there with a big frown on her face. Lisa finishes her tuba act, and the next act up is the boy with the dummy. Buffy admits that dummies give her the wig, and Xander is freaked out by a mime. And back on stage, the boy introduces himself as Morgan, and the dummy is Sid. And he launches into his act, which is, it's fucking awful. It's terrible. You can see his lips moving. His jokes are falling flat. Giles is visibly wincing. Buffy's staring in disbelief. And even Willow is just in a pure state of what the fuck. It's bad. It's really bad. But all of a sudden, things take a turn and the act starts to get funny and actually pretty good as Sid develops a personality and Morgan's lips are no longer moving while Sid is talking, and Sid is making fun of Morgan and the act in general, and everyone in the auditorium's laughing and getting into the act, including Giles and Buffy, Willow, and Xander. And we cut to the girls' locker room. And the stretching ballerina from the beginning of the episode is changing back into her regular clothes. And she tosses her ballet outfit and shoes into her locker and closes it. Of course, she hears a noise. And she calls out, no answer. And she walks to the end of the row of lockers and peeks around the corner and calls out again with no answer. And she walks around to the next row of lockers and no one's there. And we cut once again to our low to the floor POV, watching her. And then back as she continues down the road towards the showers. And then once again back to our low to the floor POV as whatever's watching her attacks her from behind as she turns around and screams. And that's our cold open.
And this thing that has attacked her, as she screams, says, "I will be flesh." Which again, later on, means fucking nothing.
Yeah.
So, and we will discuss that.
Yes.
So, coming back from commercial, we are back in the auditorium. And there's a kid practicing his magic. He's going to be the magic guy in the talent show, and of course it sucks. And Buffy, Willow, and Xander are attempting to practice what appears to be a dramatic read scene. Willow's like, "Well, this will be the easiest, quickest way to do this, and we can just get it over with." And Xander he can't do it. He just can't do it. So they kind of start discussing other options. And then suddenly Sid, the dummy, starts catcalling the girls and saying, slimy, creepy, horny dummy type shit to them.
Willow in particular.
Yeah, Willow in particular. And they're kind of, they're kind of amused by it at first. And then they're just like, okay, enough. And, Willow asks Morgan, where did the idea for the voice come from for Sid? And he says, "Oh, it's kind of an imitation of my dad." And then Sid says, "No, it's real. I'm the one with the talent. The kid here is dead weight." And they're kind of laughing, and he's kind of saying some more gross stuff to Willow. And basically Buffy's like, if you don't get a new shtick, your dummy's going to end up as a Duraflame log. And so that kind of puts an end to that. And we pan out and we see Principal Snyder and Giles walking into the auditorium. And Snyder's talking, telling about how kids these days, that they need is discipline. He rags a little bit on former Principal Flutie, who, if you recall, has been eaten, and how he was, all touchy-feely and, way too easygoing. And Snyder is clearly not going to be a touchy-feely, easygoing guy. He's clearly going to be a hard ass. So he tells Giles he knows all about the history of the school, the suicides, the missing persons, spontaneous cheerleader combustions. He's like, you got to keep an eye on the bad element, like those three, talking about Buffy, Willow, and Xander. And then he says, "Kids, I don't like them." So he's clearly chosen a very good vocation. But he says, from now on, you're going to see a new Sunnydale High, a tight ship, clean, orderly, and quiet. And then we immediately cut to a blood-curdling scream from a female who is in the locker room and has discovered the body of what was her name? I'm sorry.
We haven't gotten her name yet.
Yeah, we
so
haven't gotten her name yet.
I
The
just
girl who was attacked and now we know clearly murdered in the locker room.
our ballerina. We'll call her
Yes, our
ballerina for right now.
Ballerina girl. Yep.
Snyder does specifically mention in this scene the fact that Principal Flutie was eaten.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, it's like, but he was eaten, so screw him.
Yeah. So we then cut to the paramedics
Paramedics are there.
preparing the body to get it out of the school, and Giles comes out of the locker room into the hall and ducks under the police tape and goes over to our team of Buffy, Willow, and Xander, and he informs them that it was Emily.
Oh, that's right. That's when we get the name.
Yep. And they seem to know who she is. Xander says he hates this school. And Buffy questions if it was a vampire, and Giles says he doesn't think so, and that her heart was removed. And he says that there's various demons which feed off human hearts, and they look back and see a knife being put into an evidence bag. And Buffy says, but demons have claws and teeth. And Xander says they got no use for a big old knife.
Yep.
And so then they conclude that means the murderer is most likely human. And Willow's basically like, well, that's scarier because it could be anyone, then including me, but it's not me.
Yeah, it could be me. It's not.
Right. So then they agree that they have some investigating to do, and that and Giles sends the three of them off to interview the other kids participating in the talent show.
Yeah. So that takes us Buffy's. We're gonna have a scene here now where they're kind of gonna bounce back and forth kind of rapidly. First, we see Buffy talking with Tuba Girl, I call her, and Tuba Girl says she didn't know her very well. Then we see Giles talking to Magic Boy, we'll call him, and he says, "Well, Emily seemed happy, seemed to be looking forward to the show because she's a really good dancer. And last time he saw her, she was talking to someone, the smart guy, the one with the dummy." And that's what, and Juggler Dude is telling that to Willow, so they're kind of breaking, ba-boom, 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 bouncing around.
Right.
And Willow's like, Morgan, and she's like, or Juggler Dude's like, yeah, that's it. He was acting strange, and she's like, how? And then we cut out to Xander and Cordelia, and Cordelia says, it's just such a tragedy for me. She's like, Emma was my best friend, and he's like, Emily. So, and he's just kind of holding his head like as they're walking, like he clearly wants to, I don't know, rip his own skin off. And so we go back to Tuba Girl telling Buffy that Morgan's, kind of weird, always rubbing his head and moaning and whatnot. And then Magic Boy is telling Giles that Morgan seemed paranoid, always looking around at everyone and just seeming odd. And Juggler Boy tells Willow that he saw him arguing with his dummy. And then we get back to Cordelia and Xander, and Cordelia says all she can think is that this could have been her. And Xander's like, well, we can dream. And we cut to Buffy entering the auditorium, and we see the dummy. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I thought you had something to say.
Nope.
It looks like the dummy's up on stage with Morgan. The dummy's on a stool, and you hear the voice of Sid saying, right now we got to be on the lookout, figure out who's next. And Morgan comes kind of walking behind a curtain. He's like, well, how are we supposed to do? And then he notices Buffy, and he's just like, doo doo doo, and says he was just working on throwing his voice. And Buffy's like, have you noticed anything weird? With Emily, they're kind of talking a bit, and he sits down and starts holding his head, like it's about ready to explode. And that's when all of a sudden the Sid voice pops up and says, leave him alone. He said all he's going to say. And Buffy's like, stop, Morgan, talk for yourself, don't do it through the dummy. And then Morgan gets up and puts the dummy in the case, and he's like, I didn't mean to make you mad. Or she's like, I didn't mean to make you mad, Morgan. And he's like, no, it's him. And then he takes the case and goes. So shit is definitely weird with Morgan and this fucking dummy.
Yeah, Morgan and Sid are definitely a weird duo.
Yeah.
So we cut to the library, and Buffy, Willow, and Xander are coming in, and Xander's, quipping about how next time they split up, someone else has to take Cordy detail.
Yeah.
5 more minutes with her, and we would have had another organ donor.
Yeah.
And Willow says that she thinks she had a bit more luck, and that everyone she talked to seemed to point their fingers at the same person. And then her and Buffy, pretty much at the same time, say Morgan, like all roads lead to Morgan.
Yeah.
And they're in Giles. They walk into Giles's office in the library, and Giles said that he's kind of been led to the same conclusion. And they start going over what to do, and Xander and Willow kind of go off on this little tangent about setting up a sting operation to get him to confess, and Xander gets excited about wearing a wire.
Yeah. Doesn't take a lot to excite Xander, as we all know.
Right. Sometimes just linoleum.
Yes.
That's a much later episode reference.
Yeah.
And Buffy's like, listen, all we really know is that Morgan's a grade A weirdo, that doesn't directly lead to murder. And Xander and Willow are like, yeah, but he talks to and for his puppet. Giles says he's looking into Buffy's "it's a demon" theory, but that his investigation's kind of being hampered by having to do the talent show. And Buffy tells him to get his priorities in order, and Giles is like, Snyder's up our asses, like we can't really afford to do anything out of step while he's paying attention to us. It's too risky, especially for a Slayer. And Giles tells Buffy to keep an eye on Morgan, maybe check his locker, see if there's anything there. We then cut to the hall after school, and Buffy walks in through the stairwell, and she's looking around to see if anyone else is there. And she passes a door, and after she passes, it opens, and she turns around and glances, and for some reason doesn't see that the fucking door is now open.
Right.
And we cut to a shot of her being watched through the door, again, kind of low to the ground.
Which again makes zero fucking sense.
So she looks around and finds Morgan's locker, and she starts to work the combination, and looks around again and then slams her palm into the lock, and
Yeah, just disintegrates the fucking
just
lock.
knocks
Puts a giant
the
hole
lock
in
right
it.
out.
I mean, yeah, there's no.
Yeah.
I don't understand what was the plan here. Like, well, no one will notice that the lock has been literally crushed and pushed into itself, and I don't know.
Right. So she reaches into the hole and undoes the latch and looks around in the locker, and she's about to take Sid's case, which is in the locker, out when Principal Snyder shows up out of nowhere and grabs her hand, scaring her.
And he's literally standing, okay, like, I don't know, his face is like 4 inches away from the door of the locker that she has just caved in. Yet he never makes mention of that or anything.
Right.
So he's clearly on top of things around here.
Right. Of course, he questions what she's doing here, after school. And he's like, there's things I won't tolerate. Students loitering on campus after school, horrible murder with hearts being removed, and also smoking.
Yeah.
Buffy's like, well, I don't do any of those things, not ever. I mean, they keep going back and forth. He's like, there's something going on with you, and again asks her what she's doing here, and she says a friend wanted her to get something, from his locker, out of the case in his locker, and she pulls Sid's case partially out of the locker and opens it, and she's surprised to see it's empty, and she closes it and shoves it back in and looks at Snyder, and she's like, oh, he must have taken it and forgotten to tell me. Meanwhile, we cut to Morgan and Sid, and we see that they're the ones that are watching Buffy. And they're watching what's going on from behind the door. And Snyder tells Buffy to go on and get out of here, and turns and heads down the hall, and Buffy watches him go.
Yeah, and it's Morgan and Sid watching, so that's why I said it makes no fucking sense why they had this super low POV, because Morgan's holding Sid up, basically, at his own level. So, and then I'll go into more detail later as to why the other POV things made no fucking sense. So
right.
Anyway, we cut back to the auditorium, and Sid's on a stool again, and you just hear Morgan say, "No, I can't do it." And Sid's like, "It's the only way. She's the one. You saw what she did, how strong she is. She's the last. Just this one more and I'll be free." And Morgan's like, "No, I won't." And Sid says, "Well, I will." And then we cut to Buffy's house, nighttime. And she's in her bedroom. Looks like she's getting ready for bed. And Mama knocks on the door, and they talk about the talent show, and Mom wants to come and support, and Buffy's like, "Fuck no, hell no, I don't want you anywhere near there because it'll already be hard enough, blah blah blah. Let alone with you if I know you're in the the audience." And so she kind of puts the kibosh on that. And so like. Go ahead.
No, I'm laughing because I'm obviously following along in my notes, and I say the exact same thing in my notes. Buffy puts the kibosh on Joyce being at the talent show.
Yeah, exactly. She's just like, "Nah, that's not happening."
Sorry.
So, it's fine. And so, she tells Buffy to get some sleep, and Buffy's like, "Yeah, that's a good plan." So she turns off the light and lays down in bed and covers up, and we cut to her window, and we see Sid staring in the window. And we go to commercial break, if this were a standard television show. When we come back,
or perhaps the ad-supported version of Hulu.
In fact, indeed. When we come back from the ad-supported commercial, Buffy wakes up. She's hearing like pitter pattering on the floor, like like a toddler.
It's the pitter patter of little feet.
Yeah, almost like a little toddler's running around in her room, and she kind of sees something in the dark that looks like Sid. and she screams, and which I hate when these scenes happen a lot in these early seasons, and I hate it because she's the fucking Slayer. But anyway, she screams like a little girl and runs and turns her light on, and her mom comes in and she's like, "Oh, there's something here, there's something in here, blah 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 blah." Long story short, there was nothing in there. Her mom convinces her that, it was just a bad dream or whatever. She has to lullaby rock the Slayer to sleep. And she does mention, mom mentions before she leaves the room, she says, Buffy, you really shouldn't go to bed and go to sleep with your window open like that. And Buffy looks over at the window and she's like, I didn't.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
It's not really dramatic because we saw what happened.
Yeah,
so
we
know
Sid
Buffy's not.
there, so.
We know Buffy's not fucking crazy.
I'll take this next scene too because we've got a clip to play.
Okay.
So we jump to school the next day, and once again, all the kids are in various places on the stage practicing their deals. Magic Dude's doing more bad magic. Cordelia's walking with Giles, complaining about basically her spot on the show.
I just want to jump in here real quick. And do you find it odd that we are now, approximately halfway through the episode,
mm-hmm.
and we haven't learned anybody else's name?
Oh no, I don't find that odd at all.
Really?
Especially in these early episodes of Buffy. It's yeah. Number one, you don't see a lot of people with lines because they don't want to pay people to have even one line. So,
right.
It doesn't surprise me, no. I'm fairly well used to it in shows from the 90s of, you know what I'm saying, and getting their feet underneath them.
Yeah. Okay. It was like, I don't know why, but it struck me as odd. I'm like,
that's why I was calling everybody, Tuba Girl, Magic Boy, Juggler Boy.
Well, like I said, we're 20 minutes into the episode, and like we know Tuba Girl is Lisa. Yeah, we don't know Magic Boy's name. We know Morgan and Sid.
Mm-hmm.
Like it. Just
Juggler Boy doesn't deserve to have a name at all.
Yeah, he doesn't deserve to have a name because he fucking juggles.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And jugglers are always fucking pretentious assholes.
Right. They think they're better than you.
Right.
What a bunch of dicks.
What a bunch of dicks. So
you know what? We're gonna formally apologize to all jugglers right now. We didn't mean it.
All jugglers, we hereby offer our deepest condolences, and we are very sorry.
Right. I've tried to juggle. I can't do it. That's why I'm angry.
My brain just doesn't work like that.
Nope.
It starts to work at first, and then all hell breaks loose, and somebody loses an eye. So she's complaining about her spot on the show, that she doesn't want to come after, I believe his name is Brian's stupid band. Isn't it Brian?
I think so. Yeah. Brent maybe.
Brent. It's something with a B. She doesn't want to have. She doesn't want to have to come on and do her
Brett.
Yeah. Okay. Brett. She doesn't want to come on and sing her horrible song after Brett's dumb band is done, and he's explaining to her they have to go first so we can then clear their equipment off the stage and blah blah blah. And she keeps droning on and on about it, and he starts staring at her hair, and she's like, what? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, just your hair. And she's like, what? And she gets all self-conscious and starts touching it, and then she just bails. She's gone. And he gets a big smile on his face, Giles does, and he's like, Xander was right, works like a charm. So he got rid of her, and about that time Buffy gets there, and she sits down with everybody because Xander and Willow are in the audience area, sitting in chairs, and Giles makes his way over there, and then Buffy joins him, and she sits and basically tells them that Sid was in her room, and they're all she's like alone and alive, and they're all kind of just not really buying it.
Right. Xander said
it was a cat.
Right. I was gonna say Xander seems to think it was probably a cat.
Yeah. Came in the window and blah blah blah, and then jumped out the window, And she's like, listen, I'm not just some crazy person. I am the Slayer. You know, a little support here would be nice. And, but Giles and Willow are a little doubtful too. And Buffy mentioned she'd love to see Morgan, talk to Morgan without Sid around. And that's when Giles informs Buffy that he has found something in what research he's been able to do. And that's the clip I've got. We'll go ahead and play that here.
Oh, if it's any consolation, I may have found a possible demon culprit. There's a reference in here to a brotherhood of 7 demons who take the form of young humans. Every 7 years, these demons need human organs, a brain and a heart, to maintain their humanity. Otherwise, they revert back to their original form, which is slightly less appealing.
Slightly less appealing. So they know that much so far, at least, or think that this sounds like it could be a possible lead. And but then he says, but these demons are pretty naturally strong, very strong, and Morgan seems to be getting weaker every day.
Yes. When we see Morgan put his hand on his head, Buffy watches him.
Kind of collapses down into the seat.
Yep. Before we cut to history class here, did it sound to you like Anthony Stewart Head might have been nursing a little bit of a cold during this episode?
I thought there's certain part, like, I don't know. Normally these types of episodes are shot in 6 to 7 days tops.
Right.
And it seems like in certain scenes he does sound that way, and then in other scenes he doesn't. And if you noticed in this scene, he's got his little thermos, and he pours what appears to be hot tea into the little cup, and he's drinking it, I guess, trying to help his throat. But yeah, he did sound a little like hoarse,
Yeah.
But then in other scenes he doesn't. So it was probably some type of a quick little cold or allergies or something that he was over at some point during the taping of the episode.
Yeah, it was just something I noticed while I was watching it. I was like, there's definitely some scenes where he sounds like he's fighting something.
Yeah, it was probably some type of demonic possession.
I was gonna say maybe demon possession.
Yeah,
probably. Featured in next week's episode.
Right. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for next week's episode.
So as I said, that'll take us to history class. I'm presuming it's history class because the teacher, when we open up, is talking about President Monroe and
talking about history things.
About history things and the Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah, because my notes say, "Cut to history class. Teacher teaching."
It's very very thorough of you, Jeremy.
I do what I can.
And she's walking around talking about the Monroe Doctrine, and she walks behind Buffy, and we see Buffy that is intently watching Sid,
what the fuck? He's sitting in history class and he's got Sid sitting flat. What the fuck?
I was literally just gonna say, for some unfathomable reason, Morgan has him on his fucking lap. Yeah. During history class.
Yeah. And doesn't he have one of his hands up in the controls and then the other one's writing notes?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the what?
And Sid turns his head and looks at Buffy and lowers his brows at her, and of course Buffy's
would have been a lot creepier if he had Sid, like, say, underneath his desk, like kind of folded up underneath his desk, and then what happened. But with him sitting there, it's just fucking dumb. There's not a planet where that would happen on,
right?
Other than bullshit planet and in the galaxy horse shit.
Wow, how many light years away is that?
2.
Oh, so yes. Fairly close.
Oh yes, okay. Just on the other side of the moon.
Oh, I thought the same thing. I was like, it would be way creepier if he didn't clearly have his hand like all up in Sid's guts. so that it just looks like he's the one making Sid work. But then I thought maybe the reason they didn't do that in this scene is because I'm 85 to 90% certain that in the scene where she first confronts Morgan in the auditorium and Morgan puts Sid in the box, when he puts Sid in the box, Sid's head is turned away from Buffy. And when Buffy looks into the box at Sid, Sid's head has now turned towards Buffy.
Oh, I didn't pay that close of attention.
And Buffy's a little freaked out by it.
Still, though, that doesn't explain.
I'm
pretty...
just saying they probably didn't want to go for the same, creep thing in two different shots.
So they opted to go with some horse shit that would never happen ever anywhere.
So of course Buffy's creeped out and she, looks away at her desk, and then she looks back up and Sid's still just staring at her, and of course Cordelia's there and she notices and she leans over to Buffy, the Bucky's mascot.
Yes. Does she have the robotic arm?
Yes. The Winter Slayer.
Yes, Bucky, the Winter Slayer.
But she leans over to Buffy and she says, "Looks like someone digs you. That's adorable. You and the dummy could tour in the freak show." And of course, gives a smug Cordelia smile.
I would have just looked at her like, was that supposed to be that was horrible. Was that supposed to be an insult? Somebody needs to write your insults better, Cordelia. Because clearly Joss Whedon did not write that insult.
I probably would have just backhanded her.
Yeah, I would have been like, I feel sorry for you. if that's your attempt at bullying and being a smartass, wow.
But of course Buffy doesn't say anything. She ignores it.
Yeah, she could care less about Cordelia.
Yeah. She's just paying attention to Sid and then her desk, and the teacher asks if anyone can tell them how Spain responded to the Monroe Doctrine. Presumably we're still on that. And we see that Sid, or we hear that Sid is whispering to Morgan, and the teacher notices and confronts Morgan about it, and he gets agitated, and the teacher makes Morgan give her Sid, and she says he can have him back after school, and she opens a cupboard in her classroom and shoves him inside.
I wondered if you would use the word cupboard, because I did too. I didn't know, I was like, I wonder if he'll say cupboard or cabinet.
Oh.
I said cupboard, and I was like, maybe I'm just weird.
Nah, must be a Midwest thing.
Must be.
Non-Midwest folks, no.
Boy under the cupboard.
So then after she's locked Sid away, she's like, teacher starts talking about the first part of the 19th century, and we hear Sid from inside the cupboard. He says, "I'm still watching you."
Yeah. It's like, no, you're not, unless you can see through wood. I don't know what that line's supposed to mean.
Right. But of course, Buffy gives a uncomfortable look at the cupboard, and the teacher admonishes Morgan, and Xander and Buffy give Morgan a look, and Morgan kind of glances around between Buffy and Xander and the teacher. And then we cut to after school, and Morgan comes back to the classroom to get Sid, and Miss Jackson starts to go to the cupboard to get him. And
I wanted so badly when he came in. I'm sorry to cut in on you. But I wanted so badly when he came in to the classroom to get the dummy. I wanted so badly for him to say, "I'm sorry, Miss Jackson," but he didn't, and I was. I don't think was a thing yet. Actually,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is
Now that I think about it.
roughly. I would have to look, but we're probably roughly a decade before.
Okay, well, I guess that makes
Jackson.
sense now why he didn't say it.
Um,
But oh, that would have been awesome.
That would have been awesome. So he comes in to get Sid, and she starts to walk over to the cupboard, and she stops, and she's, kind of gives him the concerned teacher bit. I'm worried about you. You're one of the brightest kids I have, and just doesn't seem like you're all in there right now, and yada yada, blah blah blah. And Morgan's getting agitated, and he's rubbing his head, and he says everything's fine. Can I just have Sid now? And she says okay, and she opens the cupboard, and Sid's gone. And
Well, he had other things to do. He couldn't hang around the cupboard all day.
right, like, I mean, this is a grown ass dummy. He's got
Right.
he's got things to do.
Dummy's got shits to do, yo.
Right, like, the bank's only open till 5.
Yeah, and he's like, just because Morgan's in trouble, why do I have to be locked in a cupboard all day?
Right, like, fuck that guy.
Fuck this guy. I'm out of here.
He's like, I'm not the one that sat myself on his fucking lap in the middle of class.
Yeah, and controlling him with my hand while he was writing. Oh God, don't make me go over it again.
And of course Morgan starts freaking out because Sid's gone. He knew to wait for me. He knew I'd be back. The teacher's getting concerned.
Got really pissed and aggressive all of a sudden, and he's like, "Where is he? Tell me." He became
right.
He became
like
Batman.
I was just gonna say he became Christian Bale. He's like, she's like, he's not here, and he's all like, "Swear to me,
swear to me," and then he grabs her by the throat and throws her out a window. No,
right. It got dark quick.
No, but he did. He got really aggressive and shitty all of a sudden. I was like, "Whoa, Morgie."
He did. I'll also point out that in this brief little scene, we do learn that the teacher's name. Well, we just talked about it. Is Miss Jackson.
Right.
So,
she saves herself because right when he's about to go full crazy, she says, "But Martha." And I'm sorry.
Right. And he's like, "Why did you say that name?"
Why did you say that name?
And then Sid shows up and he's like, "It's his mother."
Oh, there's so many people right now like, what the fuck?
Right. They're like, this has gone totally off the fucking rails.
We're canceling them. We are no longer listening.
He's all like, he knew to wait for me. He knew I'd be back. And Miss Jackson's like, "What do you mean he?" And Morgan is just like, "What did you do with him? Where is he?" And we cut to the library. And what's happening in the library?
I was going to have you take that scene, actually. I've already flipped my page.
Oh, okay.
But I'll go back to it. And no, I got you.
You sure? I can do it.
No, man,
you don't. No.
Swear to me.
No, I'm gonna do it. We go to the library, and we see that Xander has Sid, and he's playing with him. And Buffy and Willow and Giles.
Is he now? Easy, Tiger.
As very TV-14.
Well, they were pushing that TV-14 boundary.
Buffy and Willow and Giles come into the library, and Willow and Giles have their arms full of costumes and talent show crap, and Buffy sees Xander holding Sid and, as gets a little case of the Wiggins, and wants to know where he got Sid. And Xander's like, "Well, I took him out of Miss Jackson's cupboard because you said you wanted to talk to Morgan alone. And well, now Morgan's alone and Sid's with me." And then I'm going to sum up this whole scene pretty much right here. Xander is a complete douche nozzle.
Yeah.
For the entire rest of the scene.
Yeah.
Like, he relentlessly mocks Buffy over her fear of Sid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
dummies.
Yeah.
And
He's like gaslighting her.
And I was so, I wasn't upset by it, but it definitely gave me like an ew factor for some reason.
Well, yeah, and it almost seemed like just filler, like they needed a little bit of time added to this scene. So they're like, well, here, drone on for 30 fucking minutes about how this dummy is a dummy. Like anybody didn't know that, you know?
Right. But also like what, and granted, in our previous episode, you and I kind of talked about how we can be jerks to our friends sometimes, but
yeah,
I don't imagine there's ever been or would ever be a situation where I would relentlessly mock one of my friends about a fear of theirs, a legitimate
like,
fear.
Look, you pussy, it's not real.
Right. And that's essentially what Xander was doing here.
It is. He was, and Buffy's just like, wow.
Right. She's
like, what a dick.
Right. Like we're literally on the verge of Buffy being like, Xander, you're a complete asshat.
Yeah. Like you're out of the group. You're no longer a friend of ours.
Right. So that, like I said, that goes on for a while and
way too long.
And Buffy says, you know, she's like, I'll go find Morgan. And she starts to leave and stops and gives Xander a look, and she's like, you watch the dummy. And
dummy, you watch the
dummy. And she leaves, and Xander, as Sid, he starts shaking Sid's head around, and he's going, red rum.
Which again, if you were probably any younger watchers probably have no fucking idea what that was even about. That's a reference to The Shining.
Great movie starring Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. If
also
you haven't,
great book.
Yes, if you haven't read it or you haven't seen it, go do
definitely
one or both of those things.
The book is quite a bit different.
Yes.
Stanley Kubrick did take a lot of liberties and whatnot with the movie, but still awesome movie.
Yep. And since you're listening to this podcast, perhaps you'd prefer the audiobook.
Yes, and since you're listening to this podcast, we know you have taste, so you will want to run immediately
and check out.
We just know you will.
Right. Take in some form of Stephen King's The Shining.
Yes.
Anyway,
Giles jump now because I'll do these two, and then I've got a clip.
I was just gonna say Giles and Willow leave Xander with Sid.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
They head off to
Willow says they're banished to the demon section of the card catalog.
Right, and Giles tells her he'll take organ harvesting, and she can concentrate on reanimation theory.
Yeah. Oh, and then Xander puts Sid in a chair at the end of the table.
Yep.
Like for safekeeping.
Yep, and starts to go over and do some research of his own. So. Which
just cracks me up. Xander doing research. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not sure he can even read, but okay. So anyway, Buffy's now in the auditorium in the backstage area. It's kind of dark and whatnot, and she's walking around calling Morgan's name. And there's a door there. It seems that's the door that leads outside, and for some reason she tries to go through it, but it's locked.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's good because why would you go outside to try to find it? Anyway, the door's locked, and she hears something. And so she turns, and when she turns, it's Snyder again, always popping up where he doesn't belong.
Well, I'm going to talk about that after we wrap up when we're doing our episodes summary.
Yeah. And he's, like, what are you doing here? Blah, blah, blah. And he says something along the lines of, he doesn't know if a girl should be here alone, with everything that's going on lately in the school. And she's like, well, I was just leaving and I know how to take care of myself. And he's like, all right, then. And he leaves. So it's like, this is just a completely pointless scene. It means nothing. It does nothing. it's just there, I guess, to show that he's constantly fucking just Batman appears everywhere.
I think so. I'll toss it here now. I was gonna wait till we do our, thoughts about the episode,
Mm-hmm.
but and not to give anything away early, but he's obviously supposed to be like a red herring throughout this episode.
Yeah, but there's no need for that at all.
Right.
It's
right.
there's just not a need. It's almost like they just wanted to give him screen time, and they didn't know how to do it, so they just shoehorned him in like this, and it just was
right. Like we'll
So-
have the new principal keep popping up because like maybe the new principal's the big bad, the
he's
evil
the big
thing.
bad, and,
Right.
I don't know. It was just silly.
Side note, we at the time of this episode aired, we are 3 years away from the release of Ms. Jackson by Outkast.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So-
So that was what, 2000 then?
2000, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Earlier than I thought, but definitely past this.
Yeah. Wow. Missed
Anyway.
opportunity. It's a shame.
Yep. Continue on.
Yeah. So he when he says all right then, and he goes ahead and leaves, she continues in the back area looking. We cut to Xander back in the library, supposedly researching. I don't know what the fuck he's doing. He's kind of looking at a book. He's kind of got a pencil in his mouth, and I don't know. We'll just say he's researching. He keeps looking over at Sid every now and then, like he's obviously a little bit creeped out himself with the dummy. And we cut up to the book stacks, and Willow is going over to Giles. She has found something. So let's go ahead and play that clip.
Look what I found in the section on toys and magic. On rare occasions, inanimate objects of human quality, such as dolls and mannequins, already mystically possessed of consciousness, have acted upon their desire to become human by harvesting organs.
Emily's heart.
Morgan's dummy.
He says. So yeah, she's found another little something that may or may not relate. Spoiler alert, it fucking doesn't. So go back down. We cut back down to Xander downstairs, and he gets up from his table and goes over. It looks like he's getting the dictionary. So I don't know, because you know how they normally have the dictionaries opened up and set out on top of and that's exactly what it looks like is what he grabs.
Right.
And he gets that, and he goes and sits back down, and he's and he looks up, and he looks down at the end of the table, and Sid is now gone, and he completely loses his shit.
He does.
He's like, "Oh, what the fuck!" And he jumps up and jumps on top of the table, and Willow and Giles come running from out of the book stack, and they're like, "What?" They're looking down, and they're like, "What?" And he's like, "Sid's gone," and they both fucking freak out, and they're like, "Whoa, whoa!" And I'm like, it's a dummy. It's not Jaws, like, and your feet aren't in the water. You know what the? Anyway, so they freak out.
In their defense, as to the best of their knowledge, as of right now, this dummy has already killed one person.
Well,
and
that's true.
Cut out its heart. So,
But I can never envision a world in which I'm scared of a dummy. Like, even if it's, you know what I'm saying? It's still a dummy.
oh, stupid people scare me.
Well, okay. All right. Well, that's true. So we cut back to the auditorium, and Buffy's still going around in the backstage area trying to find Morgan. And then she thuds against something. Her feet do, kind of trips over something, and it's Morgan. And Morgan dead.
Morgan is no more.
Morgan has passed away. And as she backs away, you hear her say, "Well, the demon's got himself a brain now." And all of a sudden she hears something loud. She looks up, and there's this ginormous, like, chandelier falling, from the ceiling right towards her. And right before it hits, poof, we cut to what would have been a commercial break. And when we come back from that commercial break, James, what do we see?
We see our Slayer laying unconscious underneath the chandelier.
She has been smushed.
She's been smushed. She wakes up. She's moaning. She's obviously hurt. Her vision's blurred. And again, she's hearing the pitter patter of little feet and immediately becomes alert. And she sees Sid run across the catwalk above her. And she tries to lift the chandelier, but it's too heavy. And she sees Sid now down from the catwalk in the shadows. And she's like, whoever's out there, I'm going to hurt you if you just give me a minute. And
just wait. You just wait till I get out of here. You're in.
And she's lifting at the chandelier again to no avail. And she looks back to where she last saw Sid, and she now sees his knife right above her. And she turns her head just in time to avoid taking a knife to the face.
Knife to the face!
And Sid, keeps trying and misses again. And Buffy's flailing out with her left arm and knocks him away and tries lifting the chandelier again. And this time she's able to move it enough to get out from underneath it. And Sid attacks her from behind as she's sliding out. She knocks him away and into a wall. His knife goes sliding across the floor, and she jumps over on top of him and pins him against the wall with her arm. And they have a brief exchange, and they both essentially say the same thing to each other. They're both like, you can take your heart and your brain and move on. And I'm sure they would have made great trophies for you. And you lost, and now you'll never be human. And like all of a sudden they're both confused, and they look at each other, and they're both like, what?
Yeah, because she says because she says the line, the difference is you lost and now you'll never be human. And he says, yeah, well, neither will you. And then they both go, what? So yeah, that's kind of the big moment where they're like, wait a minute.
Right.
So we cut to a scene of all the gang sitting around, and they're all just dumbfounded. They all have these just dumbfounded looks on their faces. And we hear Sid talking. He's kind of explaining the situation, that he's a demon hunter. And basically, he just says it was, there came a point where it was me, a really mean demon, a curse. And the next thing I knew, I wasn't me anymore. And I was sitting on some guy's knee with his hand up my shirt. And so, obviously he wasn't always a dummy. His soul was basically cursed into this dummy. And, he mentions he didn't team up with that Morgan had originally said, you should team up with those guys. And he didn't want to because he was convinced Buffy was the demon. So that's what he was telling Morgan about earlier about, we got to, basically do her in and whatnot, because he was convinced Buffy was the demon. He's like, because you're strong, athletic, limber, nubile. And it's like, oh, the fuck. So, anyway, he talks about, he says, now that the demon has a heart and a brain, he gets to stay in his human form for another 7 years. So that's when we come to find out that the info that Giles had discovered earlier in the episode in the clip I had played earlier is in fact the situation. It was a group of 7 demons who every 7 years have to get a new heart and a new brain so that they can stay in their quote unquote human forms. And Sid says he's killed 6 of the 7. And if he kills the last one, then the curse will be lifted and he'll be free. And he's like, and I'm sure it's someone in that stupid talent show, one of those kids. And then Buffy mentions, well, now that the demon has what it wanted, it'll be moving on. And Sid says, yeah, so if we figure out who's missing from the talent show, we'll know who our fucking demon is. And so they're all like, okay, yeah, yeah. And that's when Giles is like, fuck, speaking of the talent show, that starts like really soon. I've got to be there. So he skedaddles out of there. But Sid tells him, get everyone together so we can figure out who's missing. Get them in a power circle and, pep them up. And so he bails, and that's what we're doing. We cut backstage, and Giles is telling everyone, 15 minutes to curtain, guys. And now all of a sudden Cordelia's freaking out. She's having stage fright, second thoughts and whatnot. He just basically is just like, he doesn't really give a shit. He just kind of puts her off. And he tells everyone, he's like, we're going to assemble out here on the stage 5 minutes, 5 minutes for the power circle situation. And we see Sid and Buffy are sitting up in the catwalk area above the stage. And, he asks kind of like, what's your story? And she's like, well, I'm the Slayer. And he's like, oh shit, you're the Slayer. I knew one in the 30s, Korean, very hot. Oh, it's just like, oh, again with the dummy nastiness. He's like, hey, he's like, I was a guy at one time. This was pre-dummy. And then he explains that when he says he'll be free, that just means he gets to die, because his body is long since turned to dust. So that's his motivation in this, to get out of this dummy body and be able to go to the afterlife. And he's like, hey, I've lived a lot longer than any other demon slayer or demon hunter or slayers. So he's cool with it. He just wants to be out of this shitty body.
Yep. Why don't you go ahead and keep going, because I froze up here. So okay. my notes froze up on me.
That's fine. Giles gathers them all on stage. All the talent, quote unquote talent, and Buffy and Sid are looking on from above, and they do a little quick gathering there, and they all disperse, and then Buffy jumps down, and they're just like, no one was missing, so I guess it wasn't one of the students. And she looks back up to Sid, I guess, to say something to Sid, and he's gone. So we see Snyder. Now, this is a very weird scene. It's almost like this was like shoehorned in. All of a sudden, we cut to this scene where Snyder is walking around backstage kind of in the dark. And Giles sees him, and it appears to go and follow him. Yeah. I do not. It's just so fucking weird, because this leads nowhere.
And that's I'm telling you, I'm at this point in the episode 100% convinced that they're trying to they're deliberately using Snyder as a misdirect.
Yeah, I get that. It's just I don't know. That scene was just odd. Let's just put it that way. Very weird. The way it was shot and the way it was, where they wedged it in. It was just weird.
Right.
Anyway, now. Oh, are you ready?
No, you can finish up. I'll pick up the next scene. Okay. When we're back in the library.
Yeah, no, basically, Buffy continues looking for Sid, around backstage. She's not real sure what's going on, and she gets over to this table area, and she's like, drip, drip, drip. Something's dripping from above, and she reaches up above herself to this kind of a shelf area and grabs something and pulls it down, and it's a brain. And she throws it on the ground and kind of screams. And I'm like, okay, you're the Slayer, but okay, you're scared of a brain. So.
Realistically, though, how many brains do you think she's seen?
Well, I mean, yeah, but Jesus, she's fucking dusted vampires. She's chopped
Right.
things up, and oh my
Right.
god, it's brain. Oh!
But when you dust a vampire, like it literally turns to dust. There's no internal organs just hanging around.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Touche.
So we cut back to the library, and Willow's at one of the computers, and Buffy walks up to her, staring at her hands, and she's like, "I'm never gonna stop washing my hands." And Xander's basically like, so the dummy tells us he's a demon hunter, and we just take his word for it. And then he disappears, and now there's a brain. And does anyone else feel like we've been Kaiser Sosade? Which, again,
another reference that some younger folk will not get.
Right. It's from The Usual Suspects, a great movie. You should definitely check it out if you get the chance.
With, unfortunately, a very creepy, scummy guy in it.
Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
Who else is in that? It's Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Pollak is in it. One of the Baldwins, I think. Yeah, one of the Baldwins.
Billy.
Billy, Stephen, Francis, Jimmy. I don't know.
Anyway, it's a great movie. If you haven't seen it,
a lot of good actors in it.
Go check it out.
Yeah.
Buffy says no. She's sure that Sid's on the level, and her question is, why would the demon have rejected Morgan's brain? He was the smartest kid in school. And Willow's got his record up, and she's like, he's got straight A's. He was taking college classes. And then they see that he had a bunch of sick days, like half of the year, Xander says. And they start pulling up some.
Did you miss half of the year and still have straight A's?
Well, I mean, if you were keeping up with the homework. But
okay.
if Morgan is as smart as they are all saying he is, he probably wouldn't have wanted to let the homework just fall behind or slide. So he probably would have been keeping up with it.
Okie dokie. I'll buy that for $1.
So then they end up checking the school nurse's file, and they see that Morgan was suffering from brain cancer.
Yeah.
And that's why he was constantly, rubbing his temples and grabbing his head. He was suffering from headaches. And of course, they're like, well, so that means whatever's out there still needs a healthy, intelligent brain. And Xander's all like, I'm safe.
Yeah, and that's true.
Yeah. Buffy says that, it'll be looking for the smartest person around. And then they both look at Willow, and she looks back and forth between them. She's all like, what? And then we cut to backstage at the auditorium again, and Giles is helping Magic Boy set up. He's holding some weights in his hands, and he's giving some smart
physical lesson or something.
Yeah, about how calibrating the units of weight and calculating the specific maximum velocity achieved before the point of impact. And Magic Boy's like, gee golly, Mr. Giles, you're so smart. And he's like, could you do me a favor? And then we cut back to the library, and Willow's like, what's the demon want with me? And Xander asks what the square root of 841 is. And without even thinking, Willow spouts off 29. And then she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Buffy tells her not to worry, as long as you're with us, there's no way the demon's going to get what it wants. And we cut backstage again, and Magic Boy's testing his guillotine on a honeydew melon, and Giles picks up half the melon, and he's all the Magic Boy's all like, pretty cool, huh? And Giles is like, you're sure there's no one else who could help you out with this? And Magic Boy says, his assistant got sick, and you won't even have to say anything, just lay down. And Giles inspects the guillotine and he's like, how exactly does it work? And Magic Boy pulls the blade back, by the rope and ties it down. And he's like, a good magician never tells his secrets. And we see that his hand and his arm are beginning to turn green and kind of scaly. And he notices it too. And he pulls the sleeve of his magician's cloak down. And I'm pretty sure we know who our fucking demon is now.
Yep, there we go.
And he's all like, come on, we don't have a lot of time. And we cut back to the library and Buffy's pacing around nervously. She's all like, we can't just wait for him to come to us. We have to figure out who we're dealing with. Xander, of course, still says it's Sid. And Buffy's like, well, we ruled out all the people in the talent show. And Willow points out that that's just because they were all there. But that was before they found the brain. So, and Buffy's like, right. So whoever it probably is one of them. And Giles doesn't know. And he's with them all right now. And Xander's like, Giles can handle himself. I mean, he is really, and it clicks. And he says, smart. And we cut to the hall outside of the library. Buffy slams the door open and runs out down the hall with Xander and Willow in hot pursuit. And Buffy's yelling for Giles. And we cut backstage to the auditorium again. And now Giles is strapped down to the guillotine bench. And he's strapped down so that the guillotine, when it comes down, it would scalp him, not decapitate him. And he's like, shouldn't it be aimed at my neck? And Magic Boy's like, it's like, nope, this way your scalp gets cut off and your brains just come pouring out. And he slides the head restraint down on Giles's forehead and he leans over and locks it in place with the padlock. And Giles is like, what exactly is the trick? And Magic Boy's like, trick? And he's pulling the restraints tighter on Giles. Then Giles is like, Mark? And we finally find out that this dude's name is Mark. Like,
He's a name now.
Like 40 minutes into the episode.
Since he's going to be alive for another 45 seconds, we get his name now.
Right. And
better late than never.
Right. So Mark goes over to the block where the rope is holding the guillotine blade, and he grabs his hatchet and he takes a swing at the rope. And of course, Giles is suddenly terrified, and Mark takes another swing, and the rope is cut in half now. And he takes another swing, and the rope's almost cut through, and the blade slips a bit, and Giles looks up at it in terror, and Mark takes another swing, and the rope's hanging by a thread, and Mark raises the hatchet for a final cut, and Buffy tackles him to the floor, and they start fighting. They engage in fisticuffs.
Karate fight.
And
everybody in Sunnydale it knows karate.
And as they're fighting, Buffy sees that his skin and face are starting to begin to turn back to its demon form, and she's all like, ew.
Ew.
And as they're fighting, the rope finally stretches and snaps, and the blade's plummeting down towards Giles, and Giles yells and shuts his eyes, and out of nowhere, Xander grabs the rope in midair and stops the blade.
Just in the nick of time.
Just in the nick of time. And Giles hears it stop and opens his eyes and sees it pulling back up, and Buffy and Mark are still fighting, and Willow asks Giles where the keys are, and Giles tells her Mark has it. And Xander kicks the hatchet over to her and Willow, and she picks it up and begins to hack at the lock. Giles is yelling, hurry. and Buffy and Mark are still fighting, and they Buffy ends up shoving him into the disappearing act box, and the door closes on him, and Buffy's like, how do you lock this thing? And it wouldn't have made any difference, because just as she asks, Mark punches through the box and reaches for her, and she backs away, and because he kicks and shoves his way out of the box, and he's out, and he's completely in his demon form now, and he comes after her, and Giles is yelling what's happening, and Willow's still hacking away at the lock on the guillotine, and Buffy and Mark are fighting, and Willow finally gets the lock to break and pulls it off, and she and Giles push the head restraint up, and he gets out as fast as he can, and at that point Sid shows up, and he jumps onto Mark's back and starts stabbing him with his knife, and the demon's pretty much unfazed by Sid and continues to fight with Buffy, and Sid eventually forces Mark to let go of Buffy and jumps off, and she knocks him in the face and ends up kicking him onto the bench, where of course he lands with his neck in the guillotine brace.
Bullseye.
Right. And Buffy yells, let go, and Xander lets go, and the blade falls and cuts Mark's head off, and his body slumps lifeless on the bench, and Willow cringes at the sight, and they're all staring at what's left of the demon that was Mark. And Giles is like, I have to tell you, all of you, your timing's impeccable. And Sid has now positioned himself on top of Mark with his knife over his heart. And Buffy asks what he's doing. And Sid tells her it's not enough. He'll come back. You have to kill the heart. And then all of this will be over. And Buffy holds out her hand for the knife, and she's like, let me. I guess hoping that maybe Sid's decided he's not ready to go. Maybe living a life as a dummy is better than not living at all. And he thanks her and, says he's got it. And he pulls the knife back and plunges it into the demon's heart. And he pulls back to do it again, but he got it the first time, and he ends up slumping over dead onto the demon. Knife still in his
soul
hand.
has been released.
It's now a lifeless puppet. And Buffy looks at him sadly and, lets out a sigh and lifts him up off the demon. And Giles takes off his glasses, and Buffy starts to walk off stage with him, with Sid in his arms. And of course, at that moment, the curtain opens. And everybody in the audience sees this whole scene, and everyone starts to kind of half-heartedly clap, and we cut to Snyder in the audience, and he's like, I don't get it.
Yeah, what is it? Avant-garde?
Avant-garde, and that's our episode.
Well, what about the final scene?
Well, the final scene is it's Buffy and Xander performing their part of the talent show, and they're performing a scene from Oedipus Rex.
Yeah.
Which of course is by Sophocles. Little Oedipus Rex history. It's the first in a trilogy, followed by Oedipus at Colonus and Antigon. The gist of it is Oedipus fulfills a tragic prophecy by unknowingly murdering his father and sleeping with his mother. And Xander's playing Oedipus, Willow's playing the priest of Zeus, and Buffy's playing Jocasta, Oedipus's mother/wife. So, and that's it.
And Xander forgets his lines, and Snyder and Giles are watching. Willow just runs off the stage, and that's it.
Yep.
Let's rate this bitch, James.
This was a tough one. I am gonna go. I was gonna go 3.5 on it, but I ended up settling on 3.
Okay.
I think it was a good episode. It once again an episode that adds a decent amount of mythology to this world. It was a good balance of dialogue and action, though I will say it did get a little exposition heavy at times. Could have been a little more actiony, but I think I do think there was still a decent balance. Not as good as like the last couple episodes, but enough to keep me engaged.
Yeah.
Everybody did a really good job this episode. I liked I really liked the idea of that Sid was actually a demon hunter, like a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we could have gotten more of his backstory, to be honest. If he hadn't unfortunately perished at the end of this episode, maybe, some guest appearances down the line that fleshed out his backstory, I think would have been good. What we saw of the character, I would have really liked to see an episode or two fleshing out his demon hunting days, pre-dummy curse. What took it away for me was that half a point from 3.5 to 3 was all the Snyder red herrings.
Mm-hmm.
Just tossing him in there as a deliberate misdirect.
Well, especially when there was no type of like payoff, like, oh, okay, well, here's what all these little scenes, really meant. And it was just
right. It was very obvious that the Snyder scenes were there 100% just to misdirect us from who the real demon might be.
Yeah, and it wasn't done well. It wasn't
right.
done smoothly.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, but other than that, I think it was a solid episode. So yeah, 3 for me. How about you?
1. This gets a 1.
Wow.
Yeah, hated everything about it. Never liked it. I didn't like it the first go around, back in the day when I saw it. And I thought with this rewatch, I thought, well, I'm older, everything's different. Maybe I'll like it now.
Right.
Still fucking hate it. Can't stand it. The idea. I've always hated anything to do with puppets or dummies or whatever, like the Puppet Master movies. They're fucking dumb. They're goddamn puppets.
You're not gonna like this week's Monsterology.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care if they're demon possessed, blah blah. At the end of the day, they're fucking puppets. Just like she manhandled him in that backstage sequence. Once she got out from underneath that chandelier, she just handled him because he's a fucking puppet. So you see what I'm saying? It's just stupid. Now, let me go into how I've been teasing all episode about. I was going to bring this up. The times where we saw what we now know was the demon and they would show it from POV shots way down at the ground, and he would say dumb shit like, "I will be flesh," and he was already fucking flesh.
That
And he wasn't tiny down on the ground. That shit was stupid. Dumb. It was just dumb. It was also dumb.
that was something else I have here in my notes for my episode summary of what brought its points down for me was that also the deliberate misdirect of the POV shots
Yeah.
to lead us to believe that it was the dummy that was the demon from the
Yeah, and that's and I can't stand that type of shit in shows. Like, don't just blatantly lie.
right.
Like, misdirection's one thing. Like, that's not misdirection. That's just flat out,
Right.
number one, lying, but number two, it doesn't even make sense. He's saying, "I will be flesh." Who? No, you're already flesh.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Now you're also just adding shit in to compound the lie. Like, it's just
Right.
dumb. It's just
Well,
bad writing is what it boils down to.
I think I will to defend it slightly, the whole "I will be flesh" thing. I think that's more in relation to the demon having a human form as opposed to a demon form.
Right, but at that point, he's already a human. He's already what's his face, because they get 7 years.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, there's literally
that's the other question, because when at the beginning of the episode, when they're doing the POV through the backstage, we see Mark doing his magician routine or practicing his magician routine backstage. So at what point did this demon take on Mark's form?
It's just it's just dumb. It was dumb, dumb. Lazy writing, lazy writing, dumb and lazy writing. And it gets a 1, and it will always get a 1. Anything to do with puppets or fucking and dummies, I immediately like, this is stupid.
I'm going to, now that we've brought all that up, I would like to amend my review to a 2.5. I don't want to go so harsh as a 1, because I do think it added a good mythology to this universe, even though you don't like the idea of possessed puppets.
No, it's just silly. It's like, what is scary about that? Nothing. I would fight an army of demonic puppets all day, and I'm a 43-year-old broke down old man, and I'll fight an army of fucking demonic puppets all day, and I will motherfucking win, because they're goddamn puppets. If I can't whip a puppet's ass, fuck me. I'm going to the afterlife, because you know what I'm saying? It's just it's a puppet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as harsh about it.
Okay, the Chucky, the Child's Play. Hated it. Always hated it. Never got into it. I'm like, it's a fucking doll. Pick that motherfucker up and throw his ass in a fucking incinerator. Movie over.
I mean, and that's frequently how those types of things end. But I think leading up to that, it's like the idea of like nobody would expect that the doll is the one doing the killing.
Yeah,
I think that's where like the element of quote unquote element of surprise or the fear factor comes in, or why in those movies it's so easy for these dolls to rack up a body count is because no one expects that the doll sitting next to you on the shelf.
Then once the people realize it, and then they have like a fight scene with the doll,
that's
how
typically
is there a fight scene? The fight scene should last 0.2 milliseconds.
But I mean that's usually how it goes. Like the first Child's Play, literally as soon as they realize that Chucky's the one doing the killing, the fight is literally like 10 minutes.
It shouldn't even. It should be 10.
Well, it's 10 minutes of screen time, but like
I know.
In the movie, it's like, you know.
But it should be like, oh my god, this goddamn doll, snatch, burn, done.
Well, that's exactly what happens. They throw Chucky into a fireplace and he's burned and then beheaded and shot. So
I don't know. Those types of things were never up my alley. For me, this episode, I hate to say this, I really do, because I'm a huge fan of the show, but for me, this episode has zero redeeming qualities. There's nothing in to me, if this episode did not exist and had never happened, it changes nothing in the show.
oh no,
And I'm not saying that there aren't other episodes that are like that I do like. I'm just saying, with this episode being so poor and so lazily written and edited, apparently, I don't care. I hate it. I don't want it. I don't want it to exist anymore. I'm glad it's over. This was by far the worst episode for me to rewatch and do notes on and everything, because I just kept looking at the time like, 28 minutes left. I'd look back down. Oh shit, 27 and a half minutes left. I'm like, I just hated it. And I knew with it coming up, I was like, oh, this is going to be my rough one for the season. Thankfully it's over. So yeah, it gets a 1. I'd give it less if I could. I would give it -1 if I could.
it's your show. Do whatever you want.
No. Our agreed upon scale is 1 to 5, so it's a 1, and it only gets that 1 because that's the rule. Otherwise, it would get -1.
All right, a little monsterology for us this week. So
All right.
obviously, as just talked about, the idea of puppets in horror is nothing new. Obviously, this episode takes a lot from 1989's Puppet Master, 1988's Child's Play. But I would say going back even further than that, you have 1929's The Great Gabbo.
Yeah, there have been like puppet and doll themed horror things for. I mean,
Right.
Hitchcock's got episodes of it, and
Right.
And I never liked any of them. I never understood who's afraid of a doll. I just don't get it.
I would say this to me, the strongest contributors to this episode were probably 1929's The Great Gabbo and 1988's Child's Play. The Great Gabbo, the puppet in that Otto wasn't alive on his own, but his ventriloquist thought he was. And obviously in Child's Play, Chucky is possessed. So I feel like this episode kind of took those two ideas and married them together. So that's our monsterology for this week.
I want to jump back. I also want to bring another reason why this episode gets such a low rating from me. The character of Morgan. I forgot to bring this up. Utterly pointless. Character didn't need to be even exist. Literally, he serves no purpose. They build up this kind of weird relationship between Sid and he and everything, and then he just about halfway through the episode, he just gets offed by the demon, and I'm like, what? Like what? I don't really know how to explain it, but it's just that character meant nothing. It literally meant nothing. Like it should. They made it seem like he was building up. It was going to build up to something. They were going to explain, well, how the fuck did he find Sid? How did Sid come to be his? And then how did Sid, let him in on the secret? Hey, I'm fucking alive and I'm a demon hunter, and hey, you should fucking help me. And oh, you've got brain cancer. Blah, 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 blah. All these things, none of it meant a goddamn thing. They just fucking offed him, and that was it. And they just moved right on without him. So, I don't know. I don't get it. I just think I think the whole episode was very poorly written. It was, I don't know if it was hurried, and I don't even think so though, because it was shitty from the beginning. Like normally you can tell when there's a show or a movie that was pretty good, and then it gets to a certain point about halfway through or 3/4 of the way through where it seems like all hell breaks loose and everything just goes off the rails, like they got hurried up or whatever, like hurry up and finish this, we gotta shoot, but this was just dumb from Jump Street. And so I would just say it was a shitty episode, and whoever wrote it should turn in their Writers Guild card and retire. Yeah, that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
Well,
Yeah.
all I have to say to that is you should pay more attention when I'm giving the dates and deets, and you would know who wrote it.
Oh, I the writing duo. I remember their names. I remember the writing duo, but I can't think of their names. But yeah, if this is, and I think you said they wrote a total of 4. Five. Okay. Oh, I don't know. And we've already covered it 1 or 2, haven't we?
This is the second.
What was the first?
Never kill a boy on the first date.
Okay. That was a fairly decent episode. This was just horrible.
I think this episode is just bad for you because you don't care for the possessed puppet trope.
Yeah, but there's so many things in here that I don't like that are just, it just seems lazy to me. That's probably the word. That's the most powerful word I can think of. It just seems very lazy. And so,
because to a certain extent, I will agree that it would have been nice to see, like, how did Morgan happen to come about Sid, and how did Sid break it to Morgan that he was real and he's a demon hunter and he wants Morgan's help. But
in what way does Sid need Morgan? Like, clearly he does not need Morgan whatsoever. Because Morgan, it gets off, and it's just like, you don't even hear Sid even say, oh, that poor bastard, that fucking demon guy. He just literally doesn't give a fuck,
right.
And
right.
like, where was Sid when the demon fucking attacked Morgan? And you know what I'm saying? It was just...
He was with Buffy and everybody else in the library.
Yeah, it's just... I don't know. It was dumb. Dumb.
I think the purpose of Morgan, from Sid's perspective, he's his in to that group of people that Sid thinks is the remaining demon that he needs to kill.
But in what way did Morgan make that possible? That he couldn't have just done himself?
Well, is Sid just gonna hang out on stage with a group of high school kids?
Well, no, but he could have just
flailing around alive.
No, but he could have just put himself like in the backstage area, like with all the other props and shit. Like, I'm just saying, like, Morgan just did not seem to be in a very important fucking. He clearly didn't give a shit about him because the.
Well, I'm not arguing that he didn't give a shit about him, but I'm like Morgan was Sid's access to the goings-ons of the group.
I guess.
It's not like Sid could just walk up to Mark and be like, "Hey, I'm a living dummy. Are you a demon by any chance?"
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see that he couldn't have done all this shit in the shadows and like just hung out up in the catwalk area and fucking keep an eye on everything and be like, "Oh, I bet that motherfucker's the demon. I'm going to go stab him," and I don't know. It just seems like Morgan, I mean, he had a purpose, I guess, but it was very fucking flimsy. And, and then the whole brain cancer thing, I don't know. I have to get off the subject because
like, that was out of left field, and obviously
like, what did that have to do with anything?
Right. Well, and obviously that was thrown in there to, like successfully off Morgan, but also give us a reason as to why the demon still needed a brain.
But
Giles is
off Morgan? Why couldn't Morgan just? Okay, I'm gonna respectfully get off this train because fuck this episode. That's all I got to say. This week's episode, season 1, episode 9. Who gives a fuck? That's the title I'm gonna put in the RSS feed too.
I will agree that this isn't an episode you show someone that you're trying to get into the show.
Definitely not. This is an episode I would pretend didn't even existed if I was trying to get someone into the show.
Unless that person is a particular fan of.
Well, yeah, I guess there are people who love that Chucky stuff and
Right.
puppet master shit. You know, those people are sick and twisted. But I mean, what? I didn't even what?
You son of a bitch.
All right. So, got any final thoughts on this episode?
No. No. I mean, we're not gonna come to terms with each other on this episode.
No, we're definitely in different camps.
I will say, like, I did reduce my rating to a 2.5, based on the numerous issues I had with it, but I wouldn't say it's a completely shit episode like you do.
Yeah. It's not the zone, in other words, for you.
It's not. Yeah, it's not the zone.
That's some inside baseball.
To me, it's not even a bad day in Building A.
Oh, dude, this is totally bad day. That's exactly what this would remind me of. Like if I had to watch that episode and this episode back to back over and over for the rest of my life. Oh man.
See, I think both episodes have. So Bad Day in Building A, there's literally one good scene in that episode.
There is.
That's the scene where Duncan is talking to the little girl, and he's telling her the fairy tale about the fairies who live forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love that scene. Like, I think it's a great scene between.
I think
Duncan and the
I
kid.
probably slept through it every time and ever. I think I've seen that episode twice, whereas I've seen every other episode 200 times. So yeah, it's,
right.
Anyway,
but yeah. Anyway, moving on. Our body count for this week includes Emily, whose heart was removed in the girls' locker room by Mark.
Because that's a super easy thing to do.
Morgan, whose brain was removed backstage at the Sunnydale High School auditorium by Mark. Mark himself, whose head was cut off and his heart run through by Sid on stage at the Sunnydale High School auditorium, and poor Sid himself.
Although I would consider that more of a suicide.
That's still a body, my friend.
It is still a body. And I don't think it's sad. I think it's a happy thing that he wanted freedom from this.
He did. It's happy for him. Again, I will say it's sad for me because I really would have liked to know more of Sid's demon hunting background. You know, I like the idea of demon hunters in this universe that aren't the Slayer.
Yeah, that aren't like super powered or anything, right. and
at least until we reach the initiative, which is just complete shit.
Oh,
but anyway,
at least I know we're gonna be on agreement in a lot of those episodes.
Let's do a little behind the scenes, shall we?
Okay. I just wanted to say, I personally, you're mentioning you would have liked to have seen some more of Sid. I could give a fuck.
I know.
That's all.
I know.
Fuck Sid. Fuck his demon hunting bullshit.
Wow.
I don't like that. Yeah, see, I'm from the 30s. See, I don't like the, look here, doll. Ugh. Anyway, go ahead.
I like that. I mean, I don't necessarily like the inherent misogyny of like that kind of character from the 1930s, but I do like noir type things.
Yeah, that are done well, and that's just not ever going to be the case there with Sid. So
a little behind the scenes. The pen that Willow is using in history class is the same pen that Buffy drops when she needs to steal some of Amy's hair in The Witch.
Really?
Yep. Okay. The same pink-haired troll.
Can't get another goddamn pen or like.
I mean, we're talking about a show. I don't think I mentioned this to you at any point. I've come up with a theory as to why the bronze has such a weird menu.
Okay.
I feel like whenever a bronze scene calls for food, they just have someone run over to the craft services table and grab whatever they
and
can
they must
get
have had some really shit craft services. If we ever get the opportunity to talk to anyone from the show, which we are working on, by the way, folks, that is one of the first things I want to ask them is how shitty was craft services on set? Because
especially during that first season.
Yeah, yes, especially because raisins and cornbread muffins
and buttery croissants.
Croissant.
Oh,
Want a raisin or no? I think I'll just have a bottle of water. Thanks. No.
There were several ad libs in this episode that ended up being included in the final cut, including the part in the final scene when Willow runs off stage terrified, and when Xander does the red rum bit with Sid the dummy.
Yeah.
This episode reveals some of the Scooby's fears, which will be prominently featured in next week's episode, episode 10, Nightmares.
By the way, Scooby's is the Scooby Gang. I think it's the first time we've talked about this.
Probably.
Which is what we will come to know the group of Giles, Buffy, and Xander and Willow as.
I'm not sure when or if it actually makes it into the show's lexicon.
I feel like it does at one point, and I think this is after it had become a common thing amongst the fandom.
Amongst the fans.
I think they slid it in an episode or two, briefly referenced. But yeah, it's the well-known term used for the group.
Because I know we've already gotten Slayerettes.
Oh yeah.
In the canon of the show at this point.
Yep.
Those fears include Buffy's fear of dummies, Willow's fear of being in front of an audience, and Xander's fear of mimes.
Yep.
Which
what a weird thing to be scared of, a mime.
I mean,
I guess everybody has their thing, but
right. I mean, you've seen Highlander. Kyler was pretty scary.
Yeah, very scary. Very drunk and drinking absinthe all the time, but
the end credits roll alongside the scene of Buffy, Willow, and Xander doing their part for the talent show. And this is the first time in the Buffyverse that this happens. And the only other time this format is used will be for the episode, for the Angel episode, Judgment.
Yeah, because that final scene there was clearly, it was filmed, cut, and then they were clearly, a hair short on time, and they wedged that in there because I'm telling you that episode was meant to end with the audience reveal, Snyder saying, I don't get it, and then they came up short on time, and that was kind of
seeing as how the episode played while the end credits were rolling, I don't think they came up short for time. I think they thought it was funny, so tagged it on to the end.
And it wasn't. I hope I'm right and you're not, because that was not funny. Anyone who thought, oh my God, that's hilarious, we should put that in there. No wonder this episode existed.
This is the only time in the show that the end credits are not in the Slayer font as well.
Oh yes. Hastily done again, I believe.
On the original airing of the episode, the closing credit sequence was split screened with that scene of Buffy, Willow, and Xander performing Oedipus. It was excluded in repeat airings until the series left the WB network, where it was once again included in television reruns and added to the DVD collection.
See, because someone had taste and saw that and was like, "Oh, get rid of that. That's so stupid."
And this will make you happy.
Oh.
This is the lowest rated episode of the entire series.
What did are you being serious?
I am being serious, pulling in a total audience of 1.9 million.
And this is all time, you said, of all the whole series.
Yeah, it's the lowest rated episode of the entire series.
I wonder, see, the ratings don't necessarily tell you, but I wonder, I should have asked you to do this as the research guru.
I'm doing it right now. Wait, what are you going to ask? Because I might be doing it right now.
I was going to say, I wonder how this episode rates amongst fans, or say on Rotten Tomatoes or something.
Oh.
As it relates to the other episodes. I mean, lowest rated, okay, but I would love to know how the fandom, felt about this episode.
Right. Well, I can't.
Maybe I'm in the fucking minority, maybe a lot of people loved this episode. I never liked it from way back in its original run or whatever. Or I was a few years late, but the first time I saw it to this rewatch, I was like, oh.
Well, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that its competition when it originally aired at 8 p.m. on Monday night was Spy Game, Cosby, Melrose Place, The Jeff Foxworthy Show, and In the House.
What was that first thing you said?
Spy Game.
Spy Game? What the hell is that? I don't remember that.
No idea.
I have no memory of any. I recognize everything else you listed, but I don't know what Spy Game is. Wow, so it had a pretty weak competition at that era. I don't think any of those shows were like mega hits.
Well, so if you look at the entire 8 to 10 block, or 8 to 9 block, you've got on CBS during that time is Cosby, Everybody Loves Raymond, Sybil. On Fox was,
I think Everybody Loves Raymond was the only one of those that
Sybil was pretty popular.
Was it?
Yeah.
I didn't think it lasted very long. I thought it was okay.
On Fox, you had Melrose Place and Married with Children.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
On NBC, you had The Jeff Foxworthy Show, Mr. Rhodes, and Frasier.
Okay, wait. What day of the week?
This is Mondays.
These are Mondays. I could have sworn Melrose Place was a Sunday or anyway. It doesn't matter, but so they did have, I guess, decent competition, but
yeah,
I just
I don't think anything that should have brought the ratings down this low at the time. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was just this fucking episode. People were like,
maybe people turned it off early.
They turned it off early, or they read the that would have been the TV Guide era. They read the synopsis and were like, a fucking puppet, fuck this, and they went outside and hit themselves with hammers instead, because that's what I would have done. But anyway,
hold on a minute.
Okay.
I may have been wrong.
No, that's not possible.
Let's see. Oh, no.
Oh,
nope.
Nope.
I was right.
Wasn't
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, unless the ABC Monday Night Movie was really good that week and people didn't want to miss it.
Was there ever an ABC movie of the week that was not stupid?
Well, that week it was Tidal Wave, No Escape. So anyway.
Yeah, I think the episode just sucked. I really do. And I think a lot of people probably just tuned out. And when I got to a certain point, they were like, oh, a fucking dummy. Because I can't be the only one that's like totally turned off by the dummy and doll thing. Like, oh, this is just stupid.
Right. Let's dive into some goofs and gaffs.
All right.
when Buffy is breaking into Morgan's locker, she says 2 to the left, 3 to the right before smashing it. But she actually turns the dial to the right, then to the left.
Mm-hmm. That whole thing was pointless. I don't know why she just didn't walk up there and palm strike it right from, Jump Street.
I think for the humor factor.
I guess. Because I know it's rolling.
As John, I'm just gonna finish this episode. Okay, you just sit back. I'll do the outro and everything. You just ta-da and hit the outro music when I point at you. All right?
Okay, I'm just gonna sit here and draw on my face, pretend like this episode never happened.
When Giles announces 5 minutes until the power circle, you can hear the sound of a violin, despite the fact that the player's bow is nowhere near the violin strings. When Willow runs off stage during their Oedipus scene, you can hear a few of the crew members laughing.
Oh, I thought that was just supposed to be the audience. Huh. It worked fine. Because you know what I'm saying? It just sounded like it would be a couple of people in the front row,
right,
giggling that she ran off. Huh.
Right. And these are a couple I don't know if they're necessarily goofs, but the chandelier that Sid drops on Buffy is obviously very heavy. She has trouble lifting it a few times. Appears that it's probably made of cast iron. And you would think that even somebody with Buffy's supernatural abilities, it probably would have cracked a few ribs, maybe broken a leg, something along those lines.
Well, it clearly hit her full on. She was unable to avoid any of the impact. So it should have done some kind of
damage.
Yeah.
The power circle that Giles forms, it seems awfully quick for him to have determined so confidently that none of the talent show people were missing.
Right.
Especially considering how many students were participating and his half-ass involvement in the talent show.
He was clearly uninterested.
Right. And not really a goof, maybe more of a nitpick on my end. And I should have mentioned it at the time. But didn't anybody in the audience hear what the fuck was going on stage behind that curtain?
Right. The massive karate fight and yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like the fisticuffs and Giles screaming for his life.
Yeah.
It seems odd. But again,
maybe they were still being seated at that time and mingling and chatting amongst themselves.
Maybe. Our music for this week. So once again, we primarily just have our original score, as discussed last week, composed for the entire first season by Walter Murphy. We did get to hear a snippet of Greatest Love of All, as terribly sung by the wonderful Charisma Carpenter.
Which, let's be honest, even if it was properly sung, does anyone want to hear that song at all?
Wow.
Hot take.
So The Greatest Love of All was written by Michael Masser and Linda Creed in 1977 and originally recorded by George Benson for The Greatest, a 1977 biopic about boxer Muhammad Ali. And because I know you're so interested, as you ask repeatedly week after week, George Benson is still alive and performing and recording with his latest album, Light the Dawn, released by Rubicon Records in February of this year.
All right. Now, can you tell me what The Greatest Love of All has to do with Muhammad Ali?
No, because I've never seen the movie, so I don't know. I literally don't know anything about Muhammad Ali.
It's like they just chose a movie, a song that had the word greatest in it. Because
it was written. It was written specifically for the movie. Or no, it wasn't. I apologize. I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay.
It was recorded for the movie.
I accept your apology.
It was recorded for the movie, but that's not why it was written.
Okay.
It was later recorded by Shirley Bassey for her LP "The Magic Is You," released by United Artists Records here in the U.S. in January of 1979. She is also still alive and performing and recording music. Her latest album, "I Owe It All to You," was released by Decca Records in November of 2020.
So she's got to at least be in her 80s.
Yeah.
Minimum.
If I remember correctly, she was born in 35.
Yeah.
34, 35.
That would put her in her 80s.
And Greatest Love of All was, of course, and probably most famously recorded by Whitney Houston for her self-titled debut LP, Whitney Houston, released by Arista Records in February of 1985. Of course, Houston, as most probably know, sadly accidentally drowned in her bathtub as a result of drug overdose in February of 2012 at the age of 48.
Talk about a fucking downward spiral.
And that is all I have, my friends.
Alrighty then. Well,
do you have any final thoughts about this episode, Jeremy?
Fuck no, I don't. I am ready to wrap the fuck up because fuck this episode and everything and everyone who was attached to it.
Okay. Well, that's too bad because I want to spend another hour talking about it.
Well, you're going to be sitting here looking at a blank chair because I'm leaving.
No, I think that wraps it up. I said everything I had to say in my my wrap up and review and rating. So,
alrighty. Well, as always, thank you for joining us this week. Check us out on our socials, which we've pretty much told you a million times how to find, but go to BuffyRevisited.com. Email us at BuffyRevisited@gmail.com.
Find us on Facebook at Slade Podcast, Slade Podcast, and you'll be able to find a link tree to all of our socials, including TikTok and Twitter.
Indeed. So we
and
look
YouTube.
forward, and YouTube, yes. We look forward to you joining us for next week's episode, which will be episode 10, Nightmares. I have been one of your hosts. I'm Jeremy.
I'm your other host, James.
Ta-ta.